message to the billionaire class: you can't have it all.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of The Evolution of Now. I am Chris Robinson. I will be your host today, and I have one of my co-hosts here. His name is Michael Beswick, by the way.
I thought you forgot my name for a second.
I almost did. I was really close.
You're like, who was that again?
I was,
for a good year or two now.
I was trying to stall for time, just saying. And but Jordan could not be with us. He is just sad baby right now.
Low stamina.
Very low stamina. But he's taking a class. I think he's a class for he does art. He really enjoys art, I think, is what his class is about. I'm not entirely sure, actually, though. Mm-hmm. So it might be that, might not be. I might be completely wrong. So
hobbies are always a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, I started playing guitar a few years ago, and I haven't been doing it enough. I really should do that more, probably. But that's neither here nor there. We are now on this podcast here, guys, and we have a new topic for you guys. But first you had some new little tidbits to share with us about some UK politics.
Yeah, so, we like to start with a bit of banter, and I'll tell you what's going on this week in UK politics. And this week it's the former International Development Secretary, Priti Patel, who, she was asked to resign for doing something wrong, which to me sounds a lot like being fired, but apparently it's a different thing. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really fire some people like that, I guess.
She was asked to resign for doing something wrong, is the quote. How that is different from resigning, why don't you just say, fired, you're fired.
You just can't, though. It's the thing. Like,
I know. It's weird.
Yeah. Elected officials, I don't think, can just get fired. They can be, impeached. And that takes a process to do that. So.
Or they can be asked to resign.
Yeah, exactly.
But
that's the entire difference.
She was caught having secret meetings with Israeli officials. And
my God.
She's in charge of foreign aid. So that's not good. So she was asked to resign. So see what happens? If one of your elected officials is having secret meetings with a foreign government, you can ask them to resign. I'm not going to tell you who I'm talking about. I'm thinking you can guess. Is it
Theresa May? I don't know.
Hillary Clinton? No, it's Donald Trump. You can. The uncanniness struck me because she had meetings and she was asked to resign. I'm like, wow, the American president is all but proven collusion at this point, and he's still the president. Yeah,
I even just saw something earlier that was saying that Trump was actually trying to rig a Miss Universe pageant for a ex mistress of Vladimir Putin back in 2002 or something like that. And I was like, what? And that's interesting. But,
what makes me wonder is something I noticed when I was thinking about this whole thing. The higher the office, the higher the standard you need to hold a person. If a local level person screws up, the damage is local. If the president of America screws up, that can change the world history. This can be a massive, massive thing.
Yeah.
But for some reason, it's much easier to go after the low level guy than it is the president. The president can screw up, and it's very difficult to get him to resign, to get him out of office because he's the president.
Yeah.
Even though we really should be holding him to the higher standard.
I kind of wonder if that has something to do with capitalism, because that's exactly the same kind of trend you see with companies. When they do some nefarious shit that comes from the very top, they'll find like a low-level staffer or something like that, or just low-level programmer, and it's like, oh, it was him, and they'll fire that guy and put him in jail. but the CEOs of the company that had to sign off on these nefarious practices that they're doing
maybe
get off scot-free.
Well, I think it might also be a bit to do with the personality cult, because the person at top's often a figurehead, and so going after them, you need something really rock solid to get them. You need to catch them doing something pretty bad to bring down the figurehead, because they've got loads of support and they're a very powerful person. Whereas a person, some low-level local council person,
they're easy.
Yeah, they're easy to get, they're easy to go after.
Yeah.
Well, it strikes me as a bit backwards, because the person at top, surely we should hold them to a higher standard, not a lower one.
Yeah, you would think so. But like I'm saying, I think that has a lot to do with our culture of capitalism. Yeah. It just seems to make sense to me, at least.
Well, yeah.
But that's neither here nor there. We have a topic tonight. And that topic is millennials. And you might ask yourself, what is a millennial, pray tell?
Well, it's a lazy young person who doesn't get a job and the gig economy and the lazy, entitled and narcissistic.
Living in their parents' basements, trolls. I don't know. Trolling on the internet all day, doing nothing but sad baby things. But let's actually talk about what these quote unquote millennials are like. Now, I've been looking to find the absolute this is exactly the time stamped of people born within these parameters are definitively millennials. But I keep on finding all kinds of different things. It seems the most plausible to me is early 1980s to I believe the year 2000 or maybe 1999 itself is classified as millennials. I've seen some things going past 2000 by a few years, and some things going into 1976, even saying that people born in 1976 are also millennials, which is kind of crazy to me. But
those people are 40 years old. They're 40 and not a millennial.
I mean, if anything, it's probably more that those people that are in that range are sort of right in the middle. They're not necessarily they're sort of millennials, but they're sort of not. They're sort of Generation X, but they're sort of not, and so they're in the gray area, and people like to try and lump them into either or, depending on what is convenient for them at the time, probably. But yeah, it seems like the most correct is I think it was around 1983, 1984, I think, to 1999 to 2000 is the time-stamped range of, if you were born in that era, then you're a millennial. If you were born after that part, you are Generation Z. And if you were born before that, obviously you were Generation X. Because actually, millennials are Generation Y. But we don't usually refer to millennials as that, mostly because millennials is easy and it's
a well-known name. Everyone knows it.
Yeah. And I mean, there have been other generations that have had names stamped on them instead of a letter. The baby boomers are the generation right before X, and the generation before baby boomers was the silent generation. And the one before them, I believe, was the greater generation, the generation that fought in World War II, or the greatest generation, really. How presumptuous of them. But, yeah. I do have a clip here that came out of the camp of Bernie Sanders, actually, recently, about millennials and our strife at this time. Now, I forget the guy's name that who was in this video that's actually talking in it. Do you remember? I can't remember off the top of my head.
No, it's your clip.
Let's see, real quick. That doesn't say there either. I don't know if they actually mentioned his name at all.
It's a guy.
Some guy. I don't know. We don't know his name. He could be Sam. He could be Pete. He could be John. I don't know. Who cares? That's not important. But let's play this clip. It's, I think, a minute or two long. And he's going to explain the plight of the millennial in today's economy?
Millennials are screwed. What millennials are experiencing is the greatest student debt crisis the country has ever faced. And what that means is for folks who don't have student debt, I don't think it's really well understood. If you graduate with $40,000, $50,000 in student debt, I think last year's student debt total was about $27,000. You're not saving money. If you have to pay $1,000 each month into your student debt, you're not saving for retirement. You're not saving to buy a house. You're not saving money to start a business. And that's a tax on your future. The interesting question to answer today when we think about college for all, when we think about student debt, when we think about the plight of young people, are millennials going to see their current economic struggles as a personal problem? I can't get ahead because I'm a failure. Or are we going to take this as a collective problem? Socially, societally, throughout the economy, the United States is the wealthiest country in the world. We can afford to invest in the economic opportunities of young people. We are currently not doing that.
By the way, that background music was part of it, so I can't really turn that down, Michael. Even though you're texting me in the background. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm just straining a bit to hear it, and I'm thinking,
sorry. It's not my my thing. I'm not that sophisticated here at this show that I'm going to part background music behind it.
Yeah, just for the audience there, I messaged Chris saying, can you turn the background music down just a touch because I'm straining to hear it, and I think the audience might be as well.
Yeah, it wasn't me, I swear. I totally didn't put that in there. It was totally
But he has a point. I'm 30... No, that was before uni. I'm 45 grand in debt now. In the UK, mine's a strange circumstance because I had to take several years over again because I got ill. But completely lost train of thought. In the UK, the student loans are a bit more nice. I know in the US they're pretty damn nasty. So yeah, if you're starting out with a massive debt, in your life, you will never gain so much money.
Yeah.
And that can be on the order of a few $100,000 to, up to $1 million, say, in your whole life. If you're taking off, 50,000 of that, that's what, 0.5%? So imagine 0.5% of less money in your entire life to live on.
And you have to repay that right out of school, too.
Yeah.
So
you're starting life off with this massive debt. And
when you're
your starter wages are cut, just completely chopped off.
Yeah. Because, when you're starting out, especially, your wages are going to be low at the beginning anyway, right? So you're starting at your lowest wage already, and you're already having a large percentage of that taking off the top. And so what that does is it makes people spend much, much more conservatively for years until they can actually get over the water.
And I know the US and the UK are both struggling with this one. It's that a lot of degree fields are struggling for job places at the moment, especially in the arts. There was a big arts push 10 years ago in the UK, and I think it was in the US as well, because our economies tend to be tied together, so our economies are both doing well. So it's let's invest in the arts.
Who does that anymore, though?
Yeah, and so 10 years ago I said, hey everyone, you should go to university and do fine art and history and archaeology. And of course,
take fine arts, they said.
The economic crash happened, and all the arts jobs disappeared. And so all these people are at work now.
Yeah.
That screwed them up, isn't it? But even but that translates over to a lack of investment in high tech jobs in general. In the US, it's largely because of the economic crash and shall we say, the US does not like spending money on infrastructure, and infrastructure is one of the big places where engineers go.
Yeah.
And in the UK, it's basically austerity. Our education's fallen a bit, so we're having problems with high tech industries coming to the UK with Brexit and everything leaving over to the mainland. It's all a mess. So your high tech industries, which would employ people with these high degrees, are leaving and not not taking them on. So you end up, to cut all that out, you end up with a lot of these people with high degrees working fairly low-level jobs. The traditional McDonald's and the fast food and coffee shop.
That's definitely a thing that happens here in America, too. There are a lot of people that go, like you said, for those fine arts degrees and liberal arts degrees and everything, and they're finding they can't find jobs in these fields that they're going to school for.
There was a massive issue, and I'd be interested to see if this is true in the US as well, because it is here. With teaching, a short while ago, it was a big problem because the teachers were all grown up in the 80s, 70s, 80s. Back then, computers were the rage. And through their entire life, computing was the career to get into because it was safe and it was not going to die off. And, it keeps updating and everything's great. So the teachers in the 90s and 2000s would tell people, look, go into computing if you want a good job because, all the great jobs in computing. But now there's less of that.
Yeah.
So you've got quite a lot of computing people, and there's less computing jobs now. Yeah. So even people with what you'd think would be fairly applicable degrees. I knew a guy who worked at fast food who did biomechanical science. Still having these problems getting decent jobs for themselves. Often a year or two long before they get their first proper job. Proper being not minimum wage, something in their actual field.
Yeah.
So despite being the most educated generation, we're also quite underemployed.
Yeah. And I wanted to get into a little bit of numbers here. I'm going to be referencing heavily pewresearch.org because they have a lot of really, really good information on this topic. They have a graph here of young workers in the U.S. It says the caption of this is young workers in U.S. more likely than ever to be college graduates. And it says the silent generation, in 1964, 16% of silent generation members had college degrees, were college graduates. Boomers in 1985 had 26% of the boomers had college degrees. Generation Xers in 2000 had 32%. 32% of Gen Xers had degrees. And today, in 2016, 40% of millennials have college degrees. So it's not really a lack of education that is afflicting us right now. It's something else.
And a lot of those are STEM degrees as well.
Yeah. And, I mean, some of that, like we're saying, is we were taught as kids that you could be whatever you wanted and to follow your heart. And a lot of people chose a field that they really wanted to go into instead of a field that was practical. And this isn't to say that people shouldn't have tried to do what they want to do. It's just saying that this did happen, and we need to acknowledge that happened. And
so there is one thing I'd like to correct off the bat, because I've seen so many people say, oh, these millennials with their gender studies degrees. Do you know what they do in gender studies? It's a statistics course. They take societal statistics and analyze them for gender trends in genders. It's a module as part of a statistics course.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So they'll say, let's take something straightforward. Guys tend to be taller than girls. Look at the statistics and come up with a conclusion. Of course, that one's true, but you can apply that to other things. You can say guys tend to be better at maths, and they'll look at the statistics and decide, guys tend to be better than maths. Why might that be? That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
To learn a lot of stuff, but we can go into that in another episode because I can go on about that for a bit.
Probably. That's your area of somewhat expertise, maybe. I don't know.
Statistics. I like statistics. I'm also high on coffee. That's why I'm talking very quick.
That's fine. But yeah, I mean, I was gonna say though, part of the problem is that a lot of people did go for liberal arts degrees and things that sound like these are really cool degrees that are really cool. And the problem becomes, though, the job market for those jobs is just astronomically small. And so, like, there needs to be some way that people can approach these things with more practicality. And sort of our generation was one of the generations that 40% of our generation has gone and graduated from college. And you know, they've gotten degrees that they just can't use because they've joined a field that, like, maybe there's like 100,000 graduates in that field and like 10,000 jobs. You know,
it is quite a problem. Yeah. I got lucky because what I wanted to do happened to be quite useful, and not many people do it because I'm mad. But there's also problems with
a physics degree, right? So I mean, most people aren't going to go into physics because that's boring science stuff and sciencey things.
There's lots of biology stuff.
Yeah, biology is something that we can all relate to. We are biological creatures, so I think people are going to have more affinity to try and be in the biology field because of that, I think. Whereas physics is more of an abstract concept, and
so if anyone is
more people can't wrap their minds around it.
When I was teaching, a student said to me, "What do you think I should do at university?" I'd say, if you don't know, or college, if you don't know, don't specialise. Do, say if you want to do engineering, do chemistry and physics, because you can go into engineering later if that's what you fancy, and you can also go for anything else. So if you don't know, I tend to go with the pure sciences because you can always apply them.
Yeah, makes sense. Definitely makes sense. And but yeah, we've been having a problem in this country, though, especially, and I'm guessing in the UK too, where we are maybe not over educated, but we are under employed in these fields.
The economy doesn't take advantage of the education.
Yeah. The economy has set amounts of jobs. Like I said, you can have a field where 100,000 people have graduated with a degree in that field and have like 10,000 jobs that are available in the country, and that's it. So that becomes a problem. And then the rest of the people that can't get those jobs then have to work at Starbucks or McDonald's or something like that with a master's degree in sociology or something like that. And it's ridiculous, right? Like, you spent like $50,000 on a career just to become a minimum wage worker at McDonald's. And it's terrible.
3 or 4 years and a master's degree and 50 grand, and now you're working at McDonald's.
That's bonkers.
It's just that the economy doesn't take advantage of the education it's got. It's still used to having a certain amount of educated people, and the rest do manual labour. The economy we're shifting into now is where the low-level jobs are taken by machines, and the people do creative jobs, the high-skill stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you can obviously see that there's a problem with this, and this was especially hitting our generation. I'm sure the Generation Xers also started getting hit by this too, because they're the very last generation before the Millennials started hitting the work market, but not only are we the most educated, though, I would argue that we're some of the most underpaid in a lot of this too, because wages have been quite stagnant, haven't they? So wages have stagnated over the last few decades, and inflation has kept going up. No matter what anyone's done, the cost of living has gone up,
but the wages have stayed the same. So
absolutely.
So the older folks who are ahead in their careers and making a lot of money don't notice.
Yeah, what are you complaining about, you millennials? Everything's great for me.
When I was young, I worked a minimum wage job, and that was enough to afford everything I needed at the time. Maybe not a great life, but you could afford your flat and stuff.
That was another thing I actually wanted to mention too. Back then, especially like the further back you go, if you were going to college, you could actually pay off your college tuition by taking a summer job. You know, you could pay off all of your tuition with a summer job. You literally cannot do that anymore. You literally can't do it anymore. As a millennial, we are screwed for 30 plus years with debt. Even if we get a really good career, you know, we have so much more debt that it's crazy, you know?
I've accepted that I'm never going to pay my debt off. It's a tax for me, because the way student loans work in the UK is they just take a tax off your income. So I'm like, well, it's just a permanent tax. Yeah. In fact, in my last year when I was doing my teaching, they offered me a student loan. Do you want a student loan to help pay for this? And I said, well, I'm in like 40 grand of debt already. I might as well, because I'm never going to pay it off. Yeah. So I just got like an extra 12 grand of student loan out. Jeez. 9 to pay for the course, and then 3 to pay for, you know, just living. Yeah.
And that was like, what, 50 grand for you for a master's? Over here, that's probably 100 grand.
So in total, it's about 50 grand for a master's and a teaching qualification.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so much different here in the United States, though. Things are so much more expensive. So your degree costing around $50,000.
Mine's different, though, because I spent 6 years in university because I got ill.
Yeah.
I got quite a bad illness halfway through university, so...
Well, master's degrees, I think, are like 8 years or so, aren't they?
Depends on the degree. Mine was 4.
I thought, I think what happens here in America is 2 year is associates, 4 year is bachelor's, 8 years thought was master's, and then like 10 plus years was PhD.
Yeah, you take longer than us.
Yeah.
Your 4 years bachelor's, I think. Don't quote me, I think you can do them in 3.
Yeah.
We do 3 years bachelor's. It's either 1 or 2 years after that for a master's.
Yeah. But we get a better education, right?
A PhD can be 4 or 5 years, so I know a guy who's done it in 2. So
yeah, but yeah. So we have this problem with us being overeducated, like we're saying, and underemployed. But what else is there? You know, there's also another point that the older generations love to harp on, saying that that these millennials, they don't stay with a job long enough. They don't stay with jobs. They're always like changing jobs and just, you know, moving around all the time. And like the mainstream media has even coined it as what was it? The gig economy, I think is what they call it.
That's what they called it.
And I'm going to say here, right, guys, with the help of Pew Research here, that's actually literally not the case. And actually, the numbers are in the opposite direction, whereas I have another graph here that's millennials' job tenure no shorter than that of prior generations. And this one is only putting us against Generation X, because I think they didn't have all of the data for the other generations in this regard. But for jobs, or for people holding a job more than 13 months or more, Generation X in 2000, 59.9% of Gen Xers held a job for more than 13 months. Millennials in 2016 have held jobs for more than 13 months. 63.4% of millennials have. So we are staying with jobs more than Generation X did. And if you go out to 5 years, it's a lot closer, but we are still actually above them in that. Generation X in 2000, 21.8% of Generation X in 2000 held a job for 5 years or more. Millennials in 2016, 22% of millennials have held a job for 5 years or more. So this gig economy BS that that Fox News and all these other channels have been pushing for so long is complete and utter BS. I can't really say it much more than that. There's another graph in here that I also want to talk about. Employee tenure of college-educated young adults has increased as well, it's saying. 13 years or more. Bachelor's degree or more. It even breaks it down into men and women. Men with a bachelor's degree or more. In 2000, 72% of men in 2000 had a bachelor's degree or more and held a job for more than 13 months. In 2016, 75% of millennials have held a job for 13 months or more with a bachelor's degree. Women, it's the same thing. 70% in 2000 and 74% in 2016 for millennials.
And yeah, so it's more so. And I think it comes back to people don't remember their past very well.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think back to what you did, you're slightly older than me, so it's hard for us to get because I can't
a little bit older.
Remember what you did when you were 20? That's 10 years ago. But imagine if that was like 30, 40 years ago.
Back in my day, about 10, 20, 12 years ago, you know.
But people don't remember things very well.
No,
and
not really.
Human memory isn't perfect. And so these people might remember themselves having one job for, I started working at this place and then I stayed there. But they don't remember the 6 or 7 jobs they had before that.
And they also apparently block out of their mind in some way the previous generations saying literally the same things about their generation that they're saying about ours now. In fact, I'll tell you the quote, then I'll tell you who it's from. And it's, can I guess? Oh man, I need to try and guess.
Try and guess. Try and tell me when the quote came from. Okay?
Wrong.
It says, "The children of the day love luxury. They disrespect their elders and they chat in places of exercise." Let me just pull up the quote.
Is that is this a right winger? Or is it an American?
Could be. No, it's not an American. Okay, the children of now love luxury. They have bad manners, contempt for authority, they show disrespect for elders, and love chatter in places of exercise.
Theresa May.
Who was it?
Oh.
No. When was it? Let's start there.
When was this?
Yeah. I'll give you a guess. Just try and guess.
I'm just gonna, be very, throwing it out there. 1983.
It was Socrates.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That was a little bit
ancient Greece. So people have been saying this about kids since literally there were kids.
I was way wrong.
Yeah. So right back in ancient Greece, people are saying this about kids. Now, it's just what people do, the older generation. And I think what it is, the older generation look at 20-year-olds today, 60-year-olds look at 20-year-olds and say, my God, these kids don't have as much life experience as me.
They don't have the stamina. Oh, well, maybe not.
These 20-year-olds don't have as much life experience as me. Well, no, really. They're 20.
I mean, we all start to tend to that. When I see some younger people, I'm like, you haven't learned enough yet, guy. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I know.
I get it.
Believe me. I know loads of 16-year-olds who I've taught who think they know everything. And I'm like, kid, you've got so much to learn.
Yeah. Especially like libertarians. Oh, God, they have so much to learn.
They're not old enough for libertarians yet. Normally it's the kids who think they don't need certain subjects because they know what they're going to do and it's all set up for them. You
just got really quiet real quick.
Sorry.
Suddenly, Mike, you just hit something and you're super quiet now.
Yeah?
What did you do, Mike? What did you do? You did something. But it's all right.
Okay, I'll keep trying that. Let me check the settings. Nope, settings are fine.
This happens all the time, folks.
I'm his sure mic, this bit.
His mic is weird.
Edit this bit out. So, has it just literally...
God, Mike.
How?
I think it's fine. I think it's better now, but you just destroyed everyone's eardrums. Thank you, Mike.
Sorry. You can edit that bit out.
I think it'll be fine. Whatever.
I won't
edit it out. It's going to stay in.
Before I frantically started searching my settings. What was I ranting on about?
I already lost track too. I am the older one here, so my mind and my memory is going
Old
already.
People look at kids today and say they don't have life experience. And it's like, well, yeah, they're 20.
Yeah.
So They don't have life experience.
Wisdom comes with age, yes.
Yeah. And this happens again and again. So people literally as far back as ancient Greece are saying the kids today, they're lazy and they chatter, they don't respect their elders. And
It's always chattering around the water hole. It's terrible.
Yeah, so get over yourselves. It's just what you do. It's what we'll do. We probably will, but
back in my day,
at least be aware that everyone does.
I'm gonna totally go like full force into it, be like, "Get off my lawn, you hooligans!" And like, I'm gonna be
Socrates.
Back in my day, I used to have to walk 15 miles to the nearest grocery store, and I worked 90 hours a day. Grandpa, there's not even 90 hours in the day. How could you possibly work 90 hours in a day? Shut up, I did it! And you can't do it, you lazy hooligan! It's gonna be me. Just saying.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's gonna be great.
Tomorrow. Old man Chris.
We're like, no, get off my lawn again! I'm going to be the greatest old person ever.
There are all these stereotypes about millennials, and they're just
blatantly untrue, unfortunately.
Yeah, a lot of them are both blatantly untrue, and the stuff that every generation says the next one anyway.
Yeah. Now, there is one area where the rumors, as you might call them, are actually in some ways true. Now, this is young adults are more often living at home with their parents. And this is actually true. Millennials are living much, much more than the previous generations have with their parents. So I have a graph here. It says millennials are the generation most likely to live at home. And it goes even back to the silent generation. This is a percent of 25 to 35-year-olds living in their parents' home. Silent generation in 1964, only 8% of silent generation people between 25 and 35 were living at home with their parents. Early boomers in 1981, only 8% again. Late boomers in 1990, 11%. Gen Xers in 2000, 10%. Millennials in 2016, 15% of 25 to 35-year-olds are living at home. So, I mean, you can also look at those numbers and say, yeah, it's actually not that much more than the previous generations either. But
that's less because of like an immaturity or a laziness. It's usually because money. Yeah, it's just cheaper.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the problem, especially here in New Jersey, I have first-hand experience with this. I mean, the cost of living here in New Jersey is astronomical. It's crazy how much it costs to live here in New Jersey. And because of it, like, you can work a full-time job and get paid a bit higher than minimum wages, which I believe right now minimum wage is about 8-something an hour. You can even be getting paid like $15 an hour possibly and still be living at home in New Jersey because the cost of living is just really, really high, you know. And couple onto that, all of those college loans that you took out, now that you're out of school, you're paying those back, and that adds on to your costs. And not only that, in most places you need some kind of transportation. In a lot of places, especially if you're like suburban, you might need a car. There are a lot of people that do use public transportation, but it's a lot less convenient than having a car, for one thing. And sometimes you might even like have to take a bus to the train station and then a bus to wherever you're going. And that's a lot of
when I was
traveling.
Last year for school, we have this weird thing in this country where our trains are fucked. But to take a bus might cost £5. To take a train might cost £80. So it's costing me £80 a week to get to school and back. That's insane thinking about it. But But yeah, that's because our trains are just fucked up.
Yeah. But yeah, like there's more to it than just that. But like there's living costs for like if you were to rent an apartment here in New Jersey, I'm sure you probably can find places that are less than $1,000 to rent a room somewhere, but it's sometimes hard to find. You know,
up in the
per
towns
month.
For me, you're probably talking about 400 or 500 at least.
Yeah,
400 or 500 a month pounds.
Yeah.
In
America,
the city, you can be looking at 1,000. In London, you probably look at 2,000, 3,000.
Yeah.
It's pretty expensive down there.
Yeah. But yeah, here in New Jersey, like I said, there might be places that you can find for dirt cheap here, but they're probably going to be really, really seedy places that, like, I remember, like, there was a girl that worked at my my office a few months back, and she was telling us this, like, crazy story of her landlord, like, completely not fixing the place. They had, like, a leak during rainstorms and stuff, and it would leak right into the living room area, I think, right out of the ceiling. Eventually the roof tiles started like falling off of the ceiling and like breaking apart, and the landlord didn't fix it. They didn't care about it. Like eventually they got someone to go in there and sort of like because there was actually also mold starting to form as well.
Yeah, there would be in the damp. And
they scraped off the mold basically and put up new tiles, I guess, and it happened again and again. And it kept happening.
To fix the roof.
Yeah, they should fix the roof, but they weren't going to because some places are seedy as fucking hell.
Yeah.
And so what happened, though, is she moved out. And after they moved out, she went back to the apartment because she was in the transition period of trying to, get all of her stuff out of there. She went back, and the entire roof and the walls were growing all kinds of terrible black mold, and it's insane, and like it wasn't being fixed. These landlords are cheap sons of bitches, and they will do anything to not pay for these repairs.
He lived in this flat, and he said it's like living in a cardboard box. And I said, he's joking, he's having a laugh. He says, I like it when it rains because then the walls get damp, and I'm confident it won't catch fire. I'm like, oh shit.
God. That's terrible.
I'm like, oh shit.
Hilarious, but terrible. Yeah, at the same time. Oh my God.
I'm like, oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy. But, let's just, like, look at, like, the perspective, though, on millennials, though. Like, what we grew up into. You know, we grew up into a massive tech boom. Like, the tech industry and the internet was just happening. It happened in our lifetimes. We were children when this started happening. And that's one thing that was happening. Not only that, but there was this little this little event that happened in 2001 called I don't know, what would you call it? 9/11? I guess that's what most people call it by.
When did it happen?
There's this little terrorist attack here in the United States called 9/11. I remember the day it happened. I was in high school at the time. I believe I was actually in junior year in high school.
I barely remember. I was in secondary school.
Well, you're also in another country, so you wouldn't actually pay attention as much. But this happened to us, Michael. So screw you.
Yeah, a lot of people over here still remember it, but I was 10, 9 or 10. So
yeah, I was in junior year of high school. Actually, in a homeroom period, which was basically you would have like 2 or 3 periods of classes, and then you'd have this thing called homeroom period, where you would all like. You would go to a room and just sort of like have like 30 minutes or less or something like that to like talk with the other students and your friends and stuff that are also in your homeroom. But it happened. I remember hearing about it right before that happened. We were about to go to homeroom when I think it was an English teacher I had at the time. He got news from another teacher. They started putting it on the televisions because some classrooms had televisions and everything, and it was crazy. I did this thing back then. I was half-time in this high school and half-time in another school, but I got the bus drivers to bring me home because of what was happening, because I was so confused and angry, at what was happening. And I remember turning on the television, and right after that, a few minutes afterwards, one of the buildings fell, and I watched that live on television happen, and it was something else. That was unbelievable. That happened in our lifetimes as children. Not only that, but we also were born at a time where, a few years later, 2008 happens, and the economy crashes. And what was called today the Great Recession, because I guess it wasn't nearly as bad as the Great Depression, but
yeah, it was pretty bad.
It was pretty bad regardless,
crash.
yeah. And that was in our lifetimes as kids, as teenagers. I was, I think, in my early 20s when that happened, right?
Yeah, I was. What we're talking 2008, so I'm 16.
Yeah,
I'm just entering the world.
Yeah, and so if you think about these things, there are reasons why millennials have some messed up issues, and that's not even the half of it, though. At the time, wages, like we were saying, for decades before that, were being stagnated. And why? Because of tax cuts for the rich. And the wholesale, capture of our government by the wealthy interests. Wealthy people absolutely took hold of our government, started at least. The rich started taking hold of our government back in the 70s and 80s, especially. And, obviously they've always had a role in our government, but they really started getting their tendrils into the heart of government and sort of taking over government almost completely. And it's been this regression over the last few decades to where we are today, where we have almost complete capture of our government by the corporate interests and business interests. Because I don't know if you guys have paid much attention to most politicians these days, but everything you ever hear out of their mouths, just about, is about, how business, jobs. And that's the only thing that matters to these people. And they're talking about jobs to, make us feel better. Oh, well, we'll actually have jobs now, finally. But really, all it is just code words to try and get us to, calm down and be oh, well, they're going to get us jobs, so I guess we shouldn't raise holy hell right now because they're giving everything to the top.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
at that same time for us, we got Margaret Thatcher, 79 to 90, I think, who decimated the country. I mean,
we had Reagan in that time.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's the same for Reagan, though, because there are towns in the north of England which were normal, prosperous towns, which are still recovering from Margaret Thatcher 20 years ago.
Jeez.
That have never recovered, and Wales especially, never recovered.
Yeah. I mean,
she completely, there's entire, areas that were completely decimated because she just killed entire industries. It was just terrible.
I think all you have to do is look at Detroit here. Detroit got screwed over the decades, A lot of that is to do with globalization and everything, and allowing these corporations to do pretty much whatever they want, outsource jobs wherever they want. And what has happened is Detroit used to be the manufacturing hub of the auto industry. Now all of that has moved to either China or somewhere else in Asia or Mexico. And most of our cars from the big three, Ford, GM, and Chrysler Dodge, are made in other countries at this point. They're hardly even American cars anymore. And I think I remember also seeing that some of their CEOs aren't even Americans either. So, I mean, it's interesting. But, like, they destroyed that industry with globalization. That was another form of, government policy that destroyed an industry. And this has been happening in the tenures of people like Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, and even Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, in a lot of ways, was in some ways he was better than Reagan and George H.W. Bush, but he was very, very pro-corporate, very pro-business, and you only need to look as far as like how his administration deregulated this little thing called Glass-Steagall. And Glass-Steagall was a regulation put in place in the wake of the Great Depression. And the problem was back then were these financial institutions were becoming really, really large back then and intermingling with each other, and it caused such high risk that no one was dealing with in any way that when the market economy crashed, the entire financial industry crumbled to the ground.
And you took the entire world economy with it.
Yeah. And you can even point to that as part of the catalyst for World War II breaking out, because at the time, Germany was only staying afloat because of American loans to them. And we were helping subsidize and keep them afloat as a nation. While when the Great Depression hit, suddenly America was like, okay, you guys got to pay up now because we need the money. And so Germany was caught in a really messed up situation. And now all of a sudden, because they had to pay these debts back and they couldn't spend money on other things, their people started starving in the streets. They had all kinds of terrible things happen, and this led to the rise of the Third Reich. And this is the cost of our greed over here. We started that in some ways, and over here now in 2008, we nearly crumbled the entire world economy again with our lavishness and our greed in these financial institutions. Now, I completely skipped off on Glass-Steagall. Glass-Steagall put barriers in place between, I believe it was insurance banks or insurance companies, depositor banks, and investing banks. So
it's something like you can't use people's savings to speculate and make risky investments.
Yeah.
So,
and that's what Glass-Steagall did was prevent that from happening anymore. Because
so that no matter what happens, you can't, you'll never lose everyone's money, which is sort of what happened. Banks crashed, and then because the banks crashed, they didn't have your savings anymore.
Yeah.
That's why we had to bail them out, because everyone's savings are in these banks, and now the banks don't have the savings anymore, so nobody has any money.
Yeah, everyone lost everything except for the massively wealthy. That's the only people that made it out,
So imagine for a second if we hadn't bailed them out, if we hadn't fixed it. Nobody has any money. The whole economy grinds to a halt. Like literally grinds to a halt. Nobody has any money.
Yeah.
And we bail them out, and they get a bonus. You lost everyone's money, not just the companies. Everyone's. And you get a bonus.
This is going into 2008 now. So when
I thought you were there.
We forgot to mention, at least, that Glass-Steagall was was gotten rid of during Bill Clinton's tenure. So that's where he, like one of his most lasting legacies that has really detrimentally affected us in a very serious way. And him deregulating Glass-Steagall can, in a lot of ways, tie straight to the crash of 2008. And so at that time, now suddenly these banks were able to start using depositor money again for their really nefarious purposes on the stock market.
They can use the money you put in the bank to make investments, to make them more money.
Yeah.
But
they're making money off of our money.
Yeah,
basically.
Because they're using someone else's money. They don't care. They're just going to throw it into risky investments. And when it fails, and everyone loses their money, the government bailed them out.
Yeah.
As they had to, because, nobody's got any money left.
Yeah. But
then rather than, okay, we need to really make sure this does not happen again because it cost us a fuckload. I mean, they paid it back, but there's a massive drain in the economy.
They paid it back, but they weren't ever charged much. They were given near zero interest, so they had to repay the money that they took from the government, but with no interest at all.
So they made loads of money. Try
getting a bank loan for 0% interest rate. It's never going to happen. Never in a million years.
Some of these investments paid off. Some of them didn't. The ones that paid off, they kept. The ones that didn't pay off, they got a loan off the government at 0% interest.
Yeah.
Near zero.
It was like 0.5% or something like that. It was so minuscule. And then what these companies did then was they took this money from the government at 0.5% interest and then used that money to give other people loans. And then guess what they charged us? 10% or more sometimes. They loaned
our tax money back to us.
And they made a massive profit off of it. A massive profit. And this is why the big banks are bigger than they've ever been before. Literally no regulation has been put into place. There was a Dodd-Frank that passed, but that was sort of like putting earrings on a pig. It didn't really do a whole lot for anyone. It's better than nothing. But
to use an analogy, it's like your friend's going to Vegas and she says, well, I've got my own money, but if you give me some money and I make some, I'll give you it. It's okay. That makes sense. So you give him some money, and then he loses it all. And then he says, right, I've lost the money and I can't pay you back now. And I'm a bit screwed. Can you lend me more money? So you go, okay, right. I'll lend you more money just to get back on your feet, but you have to pay me back. And then he pays you back. You give him the money, and then he starts loaning you your money at interest. Yeah.
So you're like, okay, fine, I'll give you the money, and then he starts like, oh, by the way, you owe me.
So you say to him,
he starts really crunching the numbers. He has like a typewriter out there and everything.
You give him £1,000, right? Just get him on his feet, and you go, right, look, I'm a bit screwed. Can you give like 100, like the money you owe me back? Yeah, sure, but I'll need you to give me back at 10% interest. Wait, what? It's my money. You're paying me back.
In some ways, yeah, but
it's roundabout. But yeah, I see.
That's a really bad. I thought my analogies were really bad at times, but
they can be. I'm bad at analogies on the fly. I have to plan everything. Yeah, but you get the point.
Sad. Yeah, it's something like that.
They're lending you your money back at interest, and
yeah,
it's just so stupid.
Yeah, and this is a lot of the reason.
We didn't do anything. We didn't regulate them. You break them up would be great, but we didn't even regulate them. Make sure it doesn't happen again. Say, right, you can't do this anymore.
Yeah. This is why people like Elizabeth Warren have been pushing for a reinstatement of Glass-Steagall. And this is one thing that the Donald Trump election campaign did do, was they actually did campaign on a modern, new Glass-Steagall. And then The problem then thereafter was they didn't really mean it.
He filled his cabinet with golden snacks.
Yeah.
Bankers.
And so there was actually a really great clip of Elizabeth Warren grilling a member of Trump's cabinet that was picked for one of the administrative positions. And she is just grilling him on what actually this new Glass-Steagall thing was, and he was just stammering all over the place. He couldn't actually answer the question. It was great, but it shows you they didn't actually mean it when they were saying that they were gonna reinstate some new Glass-Steagall. Their new Glass-Steagall is, deregulate the banks more. Boom!
Because that never ends badly.
That's always great, right? That's how it works. We've
grown up in this era where the banks are free to do whatever they want and just periodically screw us. Like, we're screwed by student loans. We're screwed by the economic crash. We just keep getting screwed. And this is the sort of the atmosphere we grow up in, the economic atmosphere we grow up in. So when millennials, we live with our parents and stuff, you can't blame them because...
Oh, yeah, by the way, we were talking about millennials.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. Just the banks annoy the fuck out of us.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can't blame us because, it's the world is kind of against us.
We were kids and teenagers when this happened, all of this. And we are now left to pick up the pieces of this bullshit. And not only that, but we also have the older generations these days trying to basically sell our environment basically off to the highest bidder. They don't give a damn about change.
We fucked up the climate. Have fun with that, because it's going to be your generation that has to deal with this.
Yeah, this is the biggest problem with all of this. They always, they're creating all of these problems, and then just sort of well, someone will fix it sometime, and then they scratch their head and just run. They just bolt for the door.
The environment, the world stability, things like wars in the Middle East, and all this, these destabilizing influences in the world. Yeah. We've now got to deal with that. You've destabilized the world to make loads of money. And we've got to sort of pick up the pieces. Thanks for that, I guess.
Yeah. And I was really planning, the reason why I picked this as a topic was I really wanted to go on this epic rant about how I'm so angry at the older generations. And I mean, I guess most of this show has been that. Just more long form and with more facts than I was originally planning because I was pissed. I've been pretty pissed about this shit for a very long time because here's the thing, we are getting all of this education. It's not helping us because there's not enough jobs out there in these markets to actually get a job in these fields. So we're overeducated. We're underemployed. We are not making the kind of money that people used to make in these older generations.
Even for minimum wage jobs.
Exactly. Like we've said, inflation has kept going up, and the minimum wage has stagnated for decades now. Inflation is still going up steadily every year. And our minimum wage has been stagnant for over, I think even over 20 years at this point. It hardly has even moved in the last 20 years. Mm-hmm. And so the jobs that are here for us millennials are paying almost nothing. I was just even listening to Sam Cedar's program yesterday, the Majority Report. He had a guest on that was talking about the airline industry. And there are pilots in the airline industry that are making less than $20,000 a year. Mm-hmm. How bonkers is that?
It's just fucked up.
How insane is that? I've always looked at a piloting job as well, that's probably going to be a really decent paying job, right?
Lots of responsibility, and it's quite technical and difficult.
You have the lives of 100+ people in that plane at your fingertips, and you want these people to be well paid. And it's not an easy task to fly a plane, and these people are getting paid sometimes less than $20,000 a year. That's absolutely madness. And this is our generation that has to deal with this shit more than any other generation has. And so not only that, but it's not our generations that are causing every single goddamn war we see around the world right now. We're going in Afghanistan, Iraq, now Iran, where else? Like, what else is there? Syria. They keep on starting all of these conflicts all over the Middle East and in Asia. And who are fighting these wars? Millennials are fighting these wars for you. And so these older generations, not only are they screwing us financially and in a livelihood situation, they're screwing us by forcing us to fight these never-ending wars over oil. And it just frustrates me to no end when then they just turn around and say, oh, you're the lazy generation. You're the do-nothing generation. You're the stay-at-home and mooch off of mom generation. You know what? Fuck you. That's what I have to say to those generations because it's so frustrating to me. I'm sorry. I'm just, God damn it, man. It pisses me off so much to hear this shit all the time.
The one that gets me is when they say things like, oh yeah, you got participation trophies. For a start, I never got participation trophies. I didn't even know it was a thing until people started telling me I got them. But we were kids. We don't have a choice in the matter.
Yeah,
you gave them to us.
We didn't start that trend, people. You started the trend. You gave us these goddamn medals. And like, I do know I've gotten some really BS trophy things for like being in a bowling league or something like that. I've gotten like little tiny BS trophies that really meant nothing. That never, to me, was like, oh man, I'm great because I got a trophy. No, it was kind of like, yeah, this is just a bullshit trophy. That doesn't mean anything.
So no, don't you?
So, I mean, it wasn't like we were somehow like spoon-fed and nurtured like fucking like bratty children or something like that. We had to deal with your shit that you gave us. You know, and oh my god, man, it's so infuriating to hear this shit on a never-ending basis with especially people like the assholes at Fox News and everything that keep spouting this nonsense bullshit that our generation is somehow some lazy, you know, generation that wants everything given to us. And while we are working harder than their generations ever have, we have more education than they've ever had. We still are undereducated or underpaid, underemployed, underpaid for everything. And this is all your mistakes. We weren't born, you know, in the 70s. We weren't the ones that were in control of government for the last 30 years while wages were stagnated. It was you. It was your generations that did this. So don't give us this bullshit that it's us that did this fucking crap. It's you guys that started this, and it's you guys that put this on us.
Yeah. I can't add into that.
Man, this fucking topic, man. It infuriates me, guys. And I'm sorry for so much crass language, but, you know, I am from New Jersey. It is part of the course here. You know,
I'm English. It's fine.
You say other choice words that we wouldn't even dare say here, just because there's so much more taboo here. But but yeah, normal everyday New Jersey is like, hey, fuckface. Yeah, fucking yeah, fuck. Because we say fuck all the time here in New Jersey. I'm just gonna have to say that, guys. It's part of our nomenclature here. We just say it all the time. It's just average for New Jersey people. And, you know, I try to be tame on this show, and I try to, you know, be more understanding of every single person's position, even the older generations when I can. But this topic in itself has been infuriating to me for years on end. It's been relentless, the vitriol that they've pushed on us over the years because of this. And there's a breaking point, guys. You know, everyone has their point where they're just so fed up with the bullshit. You know? Ah, man. Here's some stats for you. More households headed by a millennial are in poverty than any other generation. U.S. households in poverty in millions in 2016. Total 16.6 million households are in poverty. 2 million of those are silent generation. 5 million baby boomer. Generation X 4.2 million. Millennial 5.3 million millennials. More than the rest of them are in poverty. We're really close to the baby boomers. I will say that. But we are in more debt and we're living in more poverty than any of these other generations have. And it ain't our goddamn fault. We just came of age like a decade or two before, like not even 2 decades, like I started working, what is it, like about 15 years ago at this point altogether,
I had a paper round back in school, and then I worked at McDonald's for a bit back in college, and then started uni, and then of course got ill, so.
My first job was at a movie theater. I was working the concession stand at a movie theater.
I did this paper round, and then on the weekends, I would watch the shop for a bit while the shopkeeper went with his kid. So he'd pick up his kid, go to the park for a bit, have a kick around in football. So I'd watch the shop for an hour.
Yeah.
That was my first job. And he'd pay me a tenner.
Yeah. Also, we have the largest number of single mother households today, too. In 2016, we finally actually beat out the other generations on largest number of single mother households. There's another graph here. The largest number of single mother households are headed by millennial. It says unmarried female household heads in U.S. who have a child younger than 18 in millions in 2016. Total 8.6. Silent and greatest generations, because they're pretty much on the way out at that point. They're not going to be heading a household with someone younger than that. They get 0.1, just I guess, as like, that's their participation trophy. That's probably more like they had to try and include them in some way. They're like, there might be someone out there. I don't know. We can't find them, but like, there's got to be someone that exists. So 0.1.
Rounding error.
Baby boomers 0.6 million baby boomers are heading single mother households with a kid younger than 18. Generation X 3.9 million, millennials 4 million. So we are, I think the Generation X has had a slight bit more of a head start, and we've already surpassed them on that mark, which is interesting, and maybe that is a factor of age too, because Generation X is getting a little older. Maybe their kids are grown up to the point where they're not under 18 anymore, so maybe they fall out of that graph. But it's still interesting. Millennials head roughly half of all cohabiting couple households, which is interesting. Total, there's 8.3 million households that are cohabiting, which means the couple isn't married, but they are cohabiting a house together. Silent generation, or silent and greatest generations 0.2, another participation trophy for them, I guess. Baby boomers 1.6 million, Generation X 2.3. Millennials, 4.2. So we are not getting married, and we are staying at home more. We're not getting married.
With some stats I see, and we don't tend to value marriage as much.
Yeah. And there's also financial reasons for that, I would assume, too, because getting married in this country, I just heard my boss the other day talking about divorce and how her divorce is actually going to cost more than her marriage, and her divorce is going to cost her, I think she was saying, somewhere around like $20,000 to get divorced. And she was saying that was more than her marriage, and she was surprised about that. So I'm guessing her marriage probably cost at least $10,000 itself,
Yeah, marriages can be expensive.
Yeah, like that's a lot of money, and we're already laying out that we're underpaid. We don't get as much money as the other generations have, especially in their primes when they were as young as we were, or are, when things were back then, wages were much, much higher for people across the board. And my personal opinion is if you let the bottom stagnate, that lets the entire thing stagnate. So
it does.
when you let the minimum wage stagnate for decades on end, every other job is going to stagnate. Whereas when you raise the minimum wage, here's the whole argument why it makes all the sense in the world to raise the minimum wage. When the minimum wage is raised, it's not that like I've had discussions with people in the past that thought that, well, I work as a boiler tech for a hospital, and I don't want to make the same amount of money as someone working at McDonald's. That's just terrible. Well, yeah, I get that, but you shouldn't be. I agree with you.
More money.
Exactly. You should be making much more than that.
There's
the thing.
Something they say.
I'm agreeing with you.
We talk about raising the minimum wage. They say, well, like you said, pilots. We don't want minimum wage. People make them same money as pilots. They say, no, I want pilots to make more money.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
want to make more money. We don't want people at McDonald's to make the same money as soldiers. You're like, well, no.
Or someone with
soldiers.
like a full...
Are you paying your soldiers that shit?
Yeah, I don't want someone with a bachelor's degree making the same amount as someone working at McDonald's with no
the people working at McDonald's
skill,
have bachelor's degrees.
It's just that's not how it works. We want people to be able to afford to live no matter where they are. And the thing that people aren't grasping, I don't think, is just how much money the top has. Now, I just heard recently, yesterday even, on, I think, Majority Report again, too. It is now official that it was either the top 3 or 4 people, the top 3 or 4 earners in America have more wealth than the bottom half of the country. So 4 people, 4 individual human beings have more wealth than over 150 million people. Now, if that in itself doesn't raise any alarm bells to you, then there's something fucked up in your head, man. You've gotta see that, You've gotta be able to see that, right? Yeah. Am I crazy in thinking that that's, like, really messed up? I mean...
It is screwed up.
Oh, man. It is so messed up, guys. I mean... We can't have these, like, well, the right says this and the left says that, so I don't know what it is. No, we know what it is. These are problems that need to be solved.
The thing that gets me as well is we're not small electorally anymore. And I think think about the future. This might be why the Republican Party is dying off now. It's because it's right-wing economics that screwed us.
Yeah.
And the Democrats being centre-right and centrist.
It works.
Yeah. I don't know if it's happened there as well, but what's happened over here is the right wing has screwed us, and the left wing, who aren't actually left, haven't fixed it.
Yeah.
And the right wing's just continued screwing us.
Now, here's a trickle down how it's worked in a nutshell, basically. So basically,
you give money to the rich, and they keep it.
Well, here's a little bit of an analogy. So you give all of the wine to the rich, right? They drink all their fill on wine, and some of that's gonna like trickle down on us, right? Well, the trickle down that we're getting is they're peeing on our faces. Yeah, basically.
Yeah, they're pissing on us.
They're pissing on us. That's really what it is.
That's the name. It's trickle down. They're literally pissing on you.
Yeah. And I mean, it's in the name. How fucking condescending is trickle down economics anyway in itself, Like, well, we give all the money and everything to the rich, and it'll eventually come down to you, because that's how it works.
It's like, rising tide raises all boats. No, because Jimmy built a fucking crane.
I mean, it's one thing to say, like, yeah, rising tide, raises all boats, but when we are all in like grasping onto like a plank of wood, and then they're on the fucking Titanic. There's a bit of a difference.
They're in the ocean where the rising tide is, and we're in a little paddling pool going, guys, help.
Yeah. we're basically we're Jack hanging onto the side of the piece of wood, the wooden plank, and they're in the Titanic that didn't sink yet. Just saying.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Too much. Too much Titanic. Okay, I'm sorry.
You worse than me analogies. Is the rum stand to get to you?
The best, big league, greatest. That's what I.
Yeah, I've had a couple of vodkas.
A little bit. I've had a little rum and Coke, vanilla Coke per se, and actually it turned out pretty well. Actually, I'll say that. But yeah, guys. I mean, this is serious. Like we cannot keep allowing this browbeat by the top or the older generations, because it's such bullshit. It's nonsensical. Everything that they say is literally the same bullshit that the generation said about them before them. So let's say, go back to Generation X. This is exactly the same shit you would have been hearing out of the silent and the greatest generations about them. And then go back further and you'll have the same type of situation happening every single time, back to Socrates' time. This is the way that older generations work, unfortunately. They just totally forget about everything that happened when they were younger.
Mm-hmm.
Such a shame,
It is. Wrap it up there, because we've been going for a while now.
All right. I guess. We are about like an hour 20 something, I think, but, But thanks, guys. I guess Mike should be the voice of reason here to get us to stop before we go into another raging tangent on this, because I probably can, because this shit pisses me off.
Vodka tangents. I can do tangents.
Yeah. I have the best tangents. You don't even know. Big league best. But thanks, guys, everybody. We forgot to do the intro where we were actually going to do like a commercial for like are you a millennial?
Do you live at your parents' house because you can't afford to have your own flat? You might be a millennial.
Yeah. We had music and everything set up.
Yeah.
Oh man, sad. Maybe another time we'll do it.
You might be a millennial. You might be suffering from millennial.
Yeah, it would have been great. But regardless of that, guys, thank you so much for tuning in again. If you guys want to like us on Facebook, we are at facebook.com/theevolutionofnow. We post every new link to every new podcast on there, so you can stay up to date if you like us and follow us on there. You can also go to what's the rest of the spiel? I'm forgetting. There's the email address. Facebook. Okay, email address. Yes, you can send all of your comments and everything, suggestions on things that you would like us to discuss on the show. Even if you have some kind of a point that you think that we got wrong on the show, I really want to hear from you guys. I really want, because my personal, motto or way of going about this stuff is I want to be right. I want to be correct. And if I am ever wrong on something, please call me out on it.
Yeah,
please call us out on it.
Hearing what you're doing right is great, but hearing what you're doing wrong is so useful.
It's so much more important than, just an echo chamber of like, oh yeah, you're great, and
yeah.
I really want it, guys.
Give us some suggestions and tell us what we're doing wrong.
Absolutely. I really want to hear from you. theevolutionofnow
at gmail.com. If you really want to tell us we're that bad, send your complaints to @RealDonaldTrump
on Twitter.
We'd love to hear from you.
We need to get them to actually also put us in there too, so we can actually see it. But we'll figure that out. We'll eventually make a Twitter, I guess. I don't really want to, but if I have to, that's another suggestion. If you guys think that we should make a Twitter for the channel, I guess you should tell us that and whatever. I guess
we should.
Maybe. But you can also you can donate to our podcast here, and we really would appreciate anything you could send us. We have 2 donors right now, David Abraham and Fred Pignali. We are getting $5 a month from them, and I really, really appreciate all of their help and their support. Although David has been trying to get a little bit more, uppity with the show, and he's starting to get like an ego complex here and starting to run the show and saying like what we should and shouldn't do. I don't know.
Okay, great. I could do with some feedback.
I don't know, but anyway, if you guys want to do that, I really would like to have your money. That's a great way to put it, right?
Bluntly. Yeah, put it bluntly.
We would really like it because we can then expand what we're doing with this show. And we really want to do a lot more. You can go to patreon.com/theevolutionofnow for that. But thank you so much, everybody, for showing up and listening to our rantings and raving. And hopefully I didn't curse too much and get pissed off. Or if you like that, tell us. Maybe I'll do that more if if you guys like that. We're we're running a business here, kind of. Not really, but. And if that's what the audience wants, I'll indulge in it a little bit more,
Let your emotions out. Or maybe I can get mad a bit. I can do mad.
Oh man, I would love to hear that actually. A British guy getting mad and starting like, "You fucking wankers!"
Yeah, just get a climate denier on. Nothing annoys me as much as a climate denier.
We'll definitely do that, guys. But any last
Don't
words?
Don't actually do that. That'd be God.
Totally doing it. What anyone out there, just send us to a friend too. If you guys like this show and you want to get other people listening, I would love to get that, because then this is the only way we're going to grow the show. I think I'm not sure how big our base is right now of people that are listening. It's not very big, but that's okay. We love you guys anyway. Mm-hmm. You have any last words that you wanted to put in here, Michael?
Just that now we are 40% of the electorate. We're going to be 40% of the electorate in 2020, so things are looking up. They will get better. And even if you're not a millennial, we are the most progressive generation. So with our share of the electorate expanding, you're probably going to see more progressive candidates. I'm not sure about more populist. We might see another populist candidate. We might not see. Depends on how things go. But certainly more progressive. Certainly less trustful of banks and big financial institutions because of our experience with the economy. And more pacifistic. We tend to be anti-war.
Yeah.
So those are all good signs.
We'll also have Generation Z, the next generation, getting old enough to start voting too, and they're they're also progressive, much more so than the older generations as well. Yeah. So this is going to just keep happening. Like it's the great adage of history has a very distinct liberal bias, or if you want to say progressive bias, if you want to say it that way too.
Reality has a liberal bias.
Yes. We at one point thought that slavery was okay, no longer the case anymore, thankfully. And there was one time where we had peasantry, no longer the case anymore. There was a time when all kinds of things were, the norm. They're no longer anymore, thankfully. We are moving towards more liberal pastures, and that's a great thing. So... with that, guys, thank you so much. Have a great, great week, and we will see you here next time.
Enjoy yourselves.